12.3, we're going to learn a formula, a very useful formula. The formula that you're going to learn, if you haven't learned it already, it is this formula that's right here. It's really big. It says x equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. If you memorize this formula, which I'm going to recommend that you do, memorize. I mean, you can put that right here. Here, true. Memorize. So that way when you look at your notes, you'll be able to know. I'm expecting you to know it. I'm not going to give it to you. There are songs that some people sing that help them to remember it. There are some tunes, like I've heard this sung to Pop Goes the Weasel. Some people like that, okay? So here is Pop Goes the Weasel. Ready? Negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I've heard it that way. I have also heard it into the tune of Jingle Bells. Jingle bells, jingle bells. Whatever is next. Okay? Ready? Negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Hey, there you go. Just move on. So there you go. No matter how you know it, you're expected to know that this is a way for you to find solutions for any quadratic equation that's written in standard form. Standard form means the ax squared, the bx, and the c are all on the same side. If it is not in standard form, you need to put it into standard form before you can use the quadratic formula. And of course, this is where it is equal to 0, so you're finding solutions or places that where this crosses. I have two videos which we will watch after we use the quadratic formula. The first video, if you're curious, is one of my favorite cartoons that deals with the quadratic formula. It's 3 minutes and 50 seconds of pure bliss. You get to see it soon. This second video is where does this formula come from? And I thought, ooh, that's a neat video. We should see it. So I'm going to show you where this formula comes from. Few things that you should know before we get started. Negative b does not mean it's always negative. Negative b means the opposite of b. So if b is a negative value, negative b would be the opposite of whatever that is. It could turn it into a positive. If it's a positive, it turns it into a negative, or a negative into a positive. Don't forget to follow the order of operations, especially some people try to subtract before they do multiplication. Multiply before you subtract. Keep that in mind. 2a also divides into both sides of the numerator. This quantity gets divided by 2a, so does this quantity. They both get divided by the 2a. That's important. That's a common mistake. I'll show you in our first example. Lastly, there's this thing called the discriminant. This piece is the discriminant. That's the name of that part of the quadratic formula. It is given by b squared minus 4ac. If that is a positive value, then you are square rooting something that's positive, and that will give you two solutions. If it's negative, you try to square root that negative value, and there's no real solutions. There's just imaginary ones, which we'll cover later today. By the way, if the discriminant is 0, there's only one solution. And I say that because some of the questions in your homework today will ask you how many solutions are there. They're not asking you to find the solutions. They're asking how many are there. So the fastest way to find out how many there are is to use the discriminant. With that being said, I saw a few people do this in the homework, and so I'm going to make a suggestion to you. Because we're not writing in the packet, if you want to do your first problem on your homework as number 5, that is fine by me. Start your homework with number 5, and then when I go to number 7, go to 7, and then when you start your homework, go 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, and so on. You just skip the ones you've already done. Doesn't that make sense? There was a couple smart kids who did that in first period, and I'm going to recommend that a lot of you, if you haven't done that, there were a few kids who did it back there too in 7th. I recommend that you do it as well. Number 5, feel free to start this on your homework sheet. Is this in standard form, or are the ax squared and the bx and the c all on the same side? Yes. And it's equal to 0, yes? Yes. Then, what I would recommend, that's the first thing you check. If it's not, you need to make it to be in that form. Then I would do this if I were you. Ax squared plus bx plus c, and it should be equal to 0. It is. Now you know what your values are, I hope. I hope you know what a is. What number is a? 1. There's 1p squared. When you don't see a number in math, it is 9 times out of 10, it's 1. What is the b value? 12. The c value is 34. Is it? Yeah. Then I might have copied the wrong question. What is number 5 of 12.3?
3n to the second plus 10n minus 5 equals 0.
Plus 10n, say it again.
Minus 5 equals 0.
I apologize. I did try to make that fix between last class and this one, and that's what happens when you're under the gun. You make mistakes. So what does that mean? My a value is? My a value is 3. My b value is 10. My c value is -5. It's already in standard form. So now I'm going to jump right into the formula, which I already have memorized because I've used it so much. You will need to practice or write it down several times. The formula is x equals -b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Hey, what does -b mean? It means the opposite of b. Instead of a positive 10, we use -10. Plus or minus radical b squared. I usually will put my b squared in parentheses, but if you want to do that part in your head, feel free to do 10 squared is 100. Minus 4. A is a 3. For AC, C is a -5. I'm putting that in parentheses so that I remember that it's all multiply on that side. Over 2a. So at this point, this is where I'm going to start to simplify. I'm going to multiply before I ever do anything else. Four times 3 is 12. 12 times 5 is 60. Negative times a negative is a positive. I already know this is -10 plus or minus the square root of 160 divided by 6. But this is not where we're going to stop. You are going to simplify 160, the square root of 160. I know that is 16 times 10. And I know there's a 4 and a 4 there. So I'm going to reduce this real quick. This is the same thing as -10 plus or minus 4 root 10 over 6. If you do not remember this, this is going back into radical form. It literally comes way when we had to simplify radicals. Is it unit 0? Oh, simplifying radical expressions. think we had these ones. 0.2. If you've forgotten it, that's where it comes from. Back to where we were. Now the other thing that we wrote is that the 2a goes into both places of the numerator. So what I want to do next is that this does simplify. The negative 10 is divided by that 2a, and so is the 4 root 10 is divided by that 2a. I'm going to split it. The reason why I split it is because then it makes it easier when I reduce. Because negative 10 over 6 reduces. Divide by 2, divide by 2. Negative 5/3. I'm going to divide the next two things, the outsides. You cannot go do an inside and an outside. These are two outsides. They reduce. 4 and the 6 reduce to 2 root 10 over 3. And this is how I'm going to recommend that you leave your answer. If, by some chance, you wanted to leave it as negative 5 plus or minus 2 root 10 over 3, that is the same thing. It is equivalent. But right now I'm going to recommend splitting it and just leaving it like that. Sure.
Wait, why did you stop on 10 right there?
Why did I stop on?
Go like
oh,
5
okay.
and 2?
Are there any pairs? See how the 4 times the 4? I could have broke those down, but as soon as I have 2, this is the square root. As soon as I have 2 factors of something, I know that's going to break out. Will that ever break out? Is there a pair of 5s? Is there a pair of 2s there? No. That's why I left it there, because I knew it wouldn't go any further. It's a good question. Good review question. You see how it's going to work? This is one of the harder ones. One of the reasons why I chose number 5 was because this problem was different than what first period had. And I wanted to make sure you saw the harder level questions. Number 7. How many solutions does each equation have, and explain why? So is this asking you to use the quadratic formula to find out what the solutions are?
No.
Just asking how many solutions are there. So you're going to use the discriminant. If you don't know what the discriminant is, it is the b squared minus 4ac. You're trying to figure out what that is. Is this in standard form? Everything's on the same side. So hopefully you know what b is. B squared. If you want, you can put it as 4 squared, or in your mind, you can just automatically go to 16, which is totally fine. Minus 4 times a times c. Keep your order of operations going. Make sure you multiply before you do any addition or subtraction. 4 times 2 is 8. It does not distribute. You only multiply left to right. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. My discriminant is equal to... So what does that mean? How many solutions are there? 1 solution. Explain why, it says. Because the discriminant is equal to 0. Because the discriminant is equal to 0. If you think about this quadratic formula, what I like to do with it is I like to think if I was adding or subtracting 0, that would mean there's only one solution. If I'm square rooting a positive value, that would give me 2 solutions. If I'm square rooting a negative, that would give me no real solution. So that's why the discriminant works the way that it does. I'm going to stop your notes right here.